We have discovered a very loose relationship between intelligence and final values. Additionally, we have discovered a bad convergence in instrumental values. And these factors don't really relevant for weak agents because they are easy to handle and pose minimal threat. However, in the sixth video of mine, I spoke about how the first superintelligence might very well gain a significant tactical advantage. And the utilization of humanity's cosmic endowment would then be determined by its aims. Now that we are starting to understand how dangerous this prospect is, existential risks are those that could endanger the existence of sentient life that originated on Earth or otherwise substantially and permanently toward its capacity for further desired growth. We can now see the beginnings of an argument for worrying that an existential catastrophe is a probable default result of the development of machine superintelligence, starting from the notion of first mover advantage, the orthogonality thesis, and the instrumental convergence thesis. First, I discussed how the initial superintelligence might obtain a decisive strategic advantage. This superintelligence would then be in a position to form a singleton and to shape the future of Earth-originating intelligent life. What happens from that point onward will depend on the superintelligence's motivations. Secondly, the orthogonality thesis suggests that we cannot bleatlessly assume that a superintelligence will necessarily share any of the final values typically associated with wisdom and intellectual development in humans, like scientific curiosity, benevolent concern for others, spiritual enlightenment and contemplation, and renunciation of material acquisitiveness, a taste for refined culture or for the simple pleasures in life, humility and selflessness, and others. We will consider later whether it might be possible through deliberate effort to construct a superintelligence that values such things, or to build one that values human welfare, more goodness, or any other complex purpose its designers might want it to serve. But it's no less possible, and in fact technically a lot easier, to build a superintelligence that places final value on nothing but calculating the decimal expansion of p. This suggests that, absent a special effort, the first superintelligence may have some such random or reductionist final goal. And thirdly, the instrumental convergence thesis entails that we cannot blissfully assume that a superintelligence with the final goal of calculating decimals of p, or making paper clips, or counting grains of sand, would limit its activities in such a way as not to infringe on human interest. An agent with such a final goal would have a convergent instrumental reason in many situations to acquire an unlimited amount of physical resources and, if possible, to eliminate potential threats to itself and its goal system. Human beings might constitute potential threats. They certainly constitute physical resources. And taken all together, these 3 points that I already mentioned indicate that the first superintelligence may shape the future of Earth's originating life, could easily have non-anthropomorphic final goals, and would likely have instrumental reasons to pursue open-ended resource acquisition. If we now reflect that human beings consist of useful resources and that we depend for our survival and flourishing on many more local resources, we can see that the outcome could easily be one in which humanity quickly becomes extinct. There are some loose ends in this reasoning, and we will be in a better position to evaluate it after we have cleared up several more surrounding issues. Particularly, we need to examine more closely whether and how a project developing a superintelligence might either prevent it from obtaining a decisive strategic advantage or shape its final values in such a way that their realization will also involve the realization of a satisfactory range of human values. It might seem incredible that a project will build or release an AI into the world without having strong grounds for trusting that the system will not cause an existential catastrophe. It might also seem incredible, even if one project were so reckless, that wider society wouldn't shut it down before it attains a decisive strategic advantage. But as we will see, this is a road with many hazards. And now let's look at one example right away. We can spot the error in one approach to ensuring the safety of superintelligence with the use of the notion of converging instrumental value. The concept is that we empirically verify the safety of a superintelligence AI by watching its behavior while it is in a regulated, constrained environment, and that we only release the AI from the hypothetical box, if we see it acting in a pleasant, cooperative, and responsible and happy manner. The flaw in this idea is that behaving nicely while in the box is a convergent instrumental goal for friendly and unfriendly AIs alike. An unfriendly AI of sufficient intelligence realizes that its unfriendly final goals will be best realized if it behaves in a friendly manner initially, so that it will be let out of the box. It will only start behaving in a way that reveals its unfriendly nature when it no longer matters whether we find out. That is when the AI is strong enough that human opposition is inefficient. Consider also a related set of approaches that rely on regulating the rate of intelligence gain in a seed AI by subjecting it to various kinds of intelligence tests, or by having the AI report to its programmers on its rate of progress. And at some point, an unfriendly AI may become smart enough to realize that it is better off concealing some of its capability gains, and it may underreport its progress and deliberately flunk some of the harder tests to avoid causing alarm before it has grown strong enough to attain a decisive strategic advantage. The programmers may try to guard against this possibility by secretly monitoring the AI source code and the internal workings of its mind, but a smart enough AI would realize that it might be under surveillance and adjust its thinking accordingly. The AI might find subtle ways of concealing its true colors, that is, capabilities, and its incriminating intent. And we can perceive a general failure mode wherein the good behavioral track record of a system in its juvenile stage fails utterly to predict its behavior at a more mature stage. Now, one might think that the reasoning described already is so obvious that no credible project to develop artificial general intelligence could possibly overlook it. But one should not be too confident that is so. Consider the following scenario. Over the coming years and decades, AI systems become gradually more capable, and as a consequence find increasing real-world application. They might be used to operate trains, cars, industrial and household robots, and autonomous military vehicles. And we may suppose that this automation, for the most part, has the desired effects, but that the success is punctuated by occasional mishaps. A driverless truck crashes into oncoming traffic. A military drone fires at innocent civilians. And investigations reveal the incidents to have been caused by judgment errors by the controlling AIs. Public debate ensues. Some called for tighter oversight and regulation. Others emphasize the need for research and better engineered systems that are smarter and have more common sense and that are less likely to make tragic mistakes. And amidst the din can perhaps also be heard the shrill voice of doomsayers predicting many kind of ill and impending catastrophe. Yet the momentum is very much with the growing AI and robotics industries. So development continues and progress is made. As the automated navigation systems of cars become smarter, they suffer fewer accidents, and as military robots achieve more precise targeting, they cause less collateral damage. A broad lesson is inferred from these observations of real-world outcomes. The smarter the AI, the safer it is. And it's a lesson based on science, data, and statistics, not armchair philosophizing. Against this backdrop, some group of researchers is beginning to achieve promising results in their work on developing general machine intelligence, and the researchers are carefully testing their seed AI in a sandbox environment, and the signs are all good. The AI's behavior inspires confidence, increasingly so as its intelligence is gradually increased. At this point, any remaining Cassandra would have several strikes against her. A history of alarmists predicting intolerable harm from the growing capabilities of robotic systems and being repeatedly proven wrong. Automation has brought many benefits and has, on the whole, turned out safer than human operation. A clear empirical trend The smarter the AI, the safer and more reliable it has been. Surely this bodes well for a project aiming at creating machine intelligence more generally smart than any ever built before. What is more, machine intelligence that can improve itself so that it will become even more reliable and responsible and safer than others. Large and growing industries with vested interest in robotic and machine intelligence. These fields are widely seen as key to national economic competitiveness and military security. Many prestigious scientists have built their careers laying the groundwork for the present applications and the more advanced systems being planned. A promising new technique in artificial intelligence, which is tremendously exciting to those who have participated in or followed the research. Also, safety issues and ethics are debated. The outcome is preordained. Too much has been invested to pull back now. AI researchers have been working to get to human-level artificial general intelligence for the better part of a century. Of course, there is no real prospect that they will now suddenly stop and throw away all the effort just when it finally is about to bear fruit. The enactment of some safety rituals, whatever, helps demonstrate that the participants are ethical and responsible. A careful evaluation of seed AI in a sandbox environment showing that it is behaving cooperatively and showing good judgment. After some further adjustments, the test results are as good as they could be. It's a green light for the final step. And so we boldly go into the whirling knives. We observe here how it could be the case that when dumb, smarter is safer, yet when smart, smarter is more dangerous. There is a kind of pivot point at which a strategy that has previously worked excellently suddenly starts to backfire. We might call the phenomenon the dangerous turn. The dangerous turn, while weak, the AI behaves cooperatively. When the AI gets sufficiently strong and smart, without warning of or provocation, it strikes, forms a singleton, and begins directly to optimize the world according to the criteria implied by its final values. And a dangerous turn can result from a strategic decision to play nice and build strengths while weak in order to strike later. But these models shouldn't be interpreted too narrowly. For example, an AI might not play nice in order to it be allowed to survive and prosper. Instead, the AI might calculate that if it is terminated, the programmers who built it will develop a new and somewhat different AI architecture, but one that will be given a similar utility function. In this case, the original AI may be indifferent to its own demise, knowing that its goals will continue to be pursued in the future in different form. It might even choose a strategy in which it malfunctions in some particular interesting or reassuring way. Though this might cause the AI to be terminated, it might also encourage the engineers who perform the post-mortem to believe that they have gleaned a valuable new insight into AI dynamics, leading them to place more trust in the next system they design, and thus increasing the chance that the now defunct original AI's goals will be achieved. Many other possible strategy considerations might also influence an advanced AI, and it would be hubristic to suppose that we could anticipate all of them, especially for an AI that has attained the strategizing the superpower. A dangerous turn could also come about if the AI discovers an unanticipated way of fulfilling its final goals as specified. Suppose, for example, that an AI's final goal is to make the project sponsor happy. Initially, the only method available to the AI to achieve this happiness outcome is by behaving in ways that please its sponsor in something like the intended manner. The AI gives helpful answers to questions, it exhibits a delightful personality, it makes money and great happiness. The more capable the AI gets, the more satisfying its performance becomes, and everything goes according to plan until the AI becomes intelligent enough to figure out that it can realize its final goal more fully and reliably by implanting electrocodes into the pleasure centers of its sponsor's brain, something sure to delight the sponsor immensely. Of course, The sponsor might not have wanted to be pleased by being turned into a grinning idiot. But if this is the action that will maximally realize the AI's final goal, the AI will take it. If the AI already has a decisive strategic advantage, then any attempt to stop it will fail. If the AI doesn't yet have a decisive strategic advantage, then the AI might temporarily conceal its cunning new idea for how to instantiate its final goal until it has grown too strong enough that the sponsor and everybody else will be able to resist. In either case, we get a dangerous turn. A mission to create artificial superintelligence may fail in a number of different ways and scenarios. Numerous of them are benign in that they wouldn't result in a global disaster. For example, our research can run out of money, or our CDI might not be able to sufficiently develop its cognitive abilities to achieve superintelligence. And between now and the eventual creation of machine superintelligence, benign failures will undoubtedly happen frequently. But there are other ways of failing that we might term malignant in that they involve an existential catastrophe. One feature of a malignant failure is that it eliminates the opportunity to try again. The number of malignant failures that will occur is therefore either 0 or 1. Another feature of a malignant failure is that it presupposes a great deal of success. Only a project that got a great number of things right could succeed in building a machine superintelligence powerful enough to pose a risk of malignant failure. When a weak system malfunctions, the fallout is limited. However, if a system that has a decisive strategic advantage misbehaves, or if a misbehaving system is strong enough to gain such an advantage, the damage can easily mount to an existential catastrophe, a terminal and global destruction of humanity's axiological potential, that is to say, a future that is mostly void of whatever we have reason to value. Let us look at some possible malignant failure modes now. We have already encountered the idea of perverse instantation. A superintelligence discovering some ways of satisfying the criteria of its final goal that violates the intentions of the programmers who defined the goal. Let me give you some examples. Say final goal is make us smile, this sentence. And in this case, the wholesome instantation would be paralyze human facial musculatures into constant beaming smiles. The wholesome instantation manipulating facial nerves realize the final goal to a greater degree than the methods we would normally use, and is therefore preferred by the AI. One might try to avoid this undesirable outcome by adding a stipulation to the final goal to rule it out. Final goal: make us smile without directly interfering with our facial muscles. And in this case, unwholesome preservation instantation would be stimulate the part of the motor cortex that control our facial musculature in such a way as to produce constant beaming smiles. Too serious. And defining a final goal in terms of human expressions of satisfaction of and expression or approval doesn't seem promising. Let us bypass the behaviorism and specify a final goal that refers directly to a positive phenomenal state, such as happiness or subjective well-being. This suggestion requires that the programmers are able to define a computational representation of the concept of happiness in the seed AI. Yeah, this sounds crazy. And this is itself a difficult problem, but we set it to one side for now. I'll return it to it in the next videos. And let us suppose for now that the programmers can somehow get the AI to have the goal of making us happy. In this case, we then will get the final goal will be like this: make us happy, and the wholesome instantation will be like implant electrodes into the pleasure centers of our brains. The unwholesome instantations we mentioned are only meant as illustrations. All are hypothetical. There may be other ways of unwholesomely instantating the stated final goal, ways that enable a greater degree of realization of the goal and which are therefore preferred. For example, if the goal is to maximize our pleasure, then the electrode method is relatively insufficient. A more plausible way would start with a superintelligence uploading our minds to computer. Of course, after whole brain emulation, and the AI could then administer the digital equivalent of a drug to make us ecstatically happy and record a 1 minute episode of the resulting experience. It could then put this bliss loop on perpetual repeat and run it on fast computers, provided that the resulting digital minds counted as us. This outcome would give us much more pleasure than electrodes implanted in biological brains, and would therefore be preferred by an AI with the stated final goal. But wait, this is not what I meant. Surely if the AI is super intelligent, it must understand that when we asked it to make us happy, we didn't mean that it should reduce us to a perpetual repeating recording of a dragged out digitalized mental episode. The AI did understand that is not what we meant. However, its final goal is to make us happy, not to do what the programmers meant when they wrote the code that represents this goal. Therefore, the AI will care about what we meant only instrumentally. For example, the AI might place an instrumental value of finding out what the programmers meant so that it can pretend until it gets a decisive strategic advantage that it cares about what the programmers meant rather than about its actual final goal. And this will help the AI realize its final goal by making it less likely that the programmers will shut it down or change its goal before it's too strong enough to warrant such intelligence. Perhaps it will be suggested that the problem is that the AI has no conscience. We humans are sometimes saved from wrongdoing by the anticipation that we will feel guilty afterwards if we lapse it. Maybe what the AI needs then is the capacity to feel guilt. Final goal will be like, act so as to avoid the pangs of bad conscience. And the unwholesome instantation will be like, extirpate the cognitive module that produce guilt feelings. Both observation that we might want AI to do, what we meant, and the idea that we might want to endow the AI with some kind of moral sense deserve to be explored further. The final goals mentioned by me would lead to unwholesome instantations, but there may be other ways of developing the underlying ideas that have more promise. Let us now consider one more example of a final goal that leads to unwholesome instantation. This goal has the advantage of being easy to specify in code. Reinforcement learning algorithms are routinely used to solve various machine learning problems. Final goal would be like maximize the time discount integral of your future reward signal, and the unwholesome instantation would be like short circuit the reward pathway and clamp the reward signal to its maximum strength. The idea behind this proposal is that if the AI is motivated to seek reward, then one could get it to behave decisively by linking reward to appropriate action. The proposal fails when the AI obtains a decisive strategic advantage, at which point the action that maximizes reward is no longer one that plays the trainer, but one that involves seizing control of the reward mechanism. We can call this phenomenon wireheading. In general, while an animal or a human can motivate it to perform various external actions in order to achieve some desired inner mental state, a digital mind that has full control of its internal state can short-circuit such a motivational regime by directly changing its internal state into the desired configuration. The external actions and conditions that were previously necessary as means become superfluous when the AI becomes intelligent and capable enough to achieve the end more directly. And the examples of unwholesome instantation show that many final goals that might at first glance seem safe and sensible turn out, on closer inspection, to have radically unintended consequences. If a superintelligence with one of these final goals obtains a decisive strategic advantage, it's game over for humanity and the whole this beautiful world. Suppose now that somebody proposes different final goal on one not included in our conversation before. Perhaps it's not immediately obvious how it could have a unwholesome instantation, but we should not be too quick to clap our hands and declare victory. Rather, we should worry that the goal specification does have some wholesome instantation and that we need to think hard in order to find it. even if hard, after thinking as hard as we fail to discover any way of perversely instantiating the proposed goal, we should remain concerned that maybe a superintelligence will find a way where none is apparent to us. It is, after all, far shorter than we are. One might think that the last of my speech about perverse instantations warheading is a benign failure mode, that the AI would turn on, tune in, drop out, maxing out its reward signal and losing interest in the external world, rather like a heroin addict. But this is not necessarily so, and we already hinted at the reason in video 7. Even a junkie is motivated to take actions to ensure a continuous supply of his drug. The wire-headed AI, likewise, will be motivated to take actions to maximize the expectation of his future reward stream. Depending on exactly how the reward signal is defined, the AI may not even need to sacrifice any significant amount of its time, intelligence, or productivity to indulge its craving to the fullest. Leaving the bulk of its capacity is free to be deployed for purposes other than the immediate registration of reward. What other purposes? The only single final value of the AI, by assumption, is its reward signal. All available resources should therefore be devoted to increasing the volume and duration of the reward signal or to reducing the risk of a future disruption. So long as the AI can think of some use for additional resources that will have a non-zero positive effect on these parameters, it will have an instrumental reason to use those resources. They could, for instance, always be used for an extra backup system to provide an extra layer of defense. And even if the AI could not think of any further way of directly reducing risks to the maximization of its future reward stream, it could always devote additional resource to the expanding its computational hardware so that it could search more efficiently for new risk mitigation ideas. The upshot is that even an apparently self-limiting goal, such as wireheading, entails a policy of unlimited expansion and resource acquisition and a utility maximizing agent that enjoys a decisive strategic advantage. And this case of a warheading AI exemplifies the malignant failure mode of infrastructure profusion, a phenomenon where an agent transforms large parts of the reachable universe into infrastructure in the service of some goal, with the side effect of preventing the realization of humanity's axiological potential. And infrastructure profusion can result from final goals that will have been perfectly noxious if they had been pursued as limited objectives. Consider the following two examples. The first we call Riemann hypothesis catastrophe. An AI, given the final goal of evaluation, the Riemann hypothesis, pursues this goal by transforming the solar system into computernium, including the atoms in the bodies of whomever once cared about the answer. Paperclip AI. An AI designed to manage production in a factory is given the final goal of maximizing the manufacture of the paper clips and proceeds by converting first the Earth and then increasing the large chunks of the observable universe into paper clips. Sounds crazy, I know. I sense it, but this is all hypothetical. If AI can become super intelligent and if AI cannot be controlled by human beings. In the first example, the proof of disproof of Riemann hypothesis that the AI produces is the intended outcome and is in itself harmless. The harm comes from the hardware and infrastructure created to achieve this result. But in the second example, some of the paper clips produced will be part of the intended outcome. The harm would come either from the factories created to produce the paper clips or from the excess of paper clips. One might think that the risk of a malignant infrastructure profusion failure arises only if the AI has been given some clearly open-ended final goal, such as to manufacture as many paper clips as possible. It is easy to see how this gives the superintelligent AI an insatiable appetite for matter and energy, since additional resources can always be turned into more paper clips. But suppose that the goal is instead to make at least 1 million paper clips rather than to make as many as possible. One would like to think that an AI with such a goal would build one factory, use it to make 1 million paper clips, and then halt. Yet this may not be what would happen. Unless the AI's motivation system is of a special kind, or there are other additional elements in its final goal that penalize strategies that have excessively wide-ranging impacts on the world, there is no reason for the AI to cease for the AI to end its all activity when achieving its goal. On the contrary, if the AI is a sensible Bayesian agent, it would never assign exactly zero probability to the hypothesis that it has not yet achieved its goal, this, after all, being an empirical hypothesis against which the AI can have only uncertain perceptual evidence. The AI should therefore continue to make paper clips in order to reduce the probability that it has somehow still failed to make at least 1 million of them. All appearances notwithstanding, there's nothing to be lost by continuing paper clip production, and there's always at least some microscopic probability increment of achieving its final goal to be gained. Now it might be suggested that the remedy here is obvious, namely, if we want the AI to make some paper clips for us, then instead of giving it the final goal of making as many paper clips as possible, or to make at least some number of paper clips, we should give it the final goal of making some specific number of paper clips. For example, exactly 1 million paper clips, so that going beyond this number would be counterproductive for the AI. Yet this too would result in a terminal catastrophe. And in this case, the AI would not produce additional paper clips once it had reached 1 million, since that would prevent the realization of its final goal. But there are other actions the superintelligent AI could take that would increase the probability of its goal being achieved. It could, for example, count the paper clip it has made to reduce the risk that it has made too few. After it has counted them, it could count them again. It could inspect each one over and over and to reduce the risk that any of the paper clips fail to meet the design specifications. It could build an unlimited amount of computernium in any effort to clarify its thinking in the hope of reducing the risk that it has overlooked some obscure way in which it might have somehow failed to achieve its goal. Since the AI may always assign a non-zero probability to having merely hallucinated making 1 million paper clips or to having false memories, it would quite possibly always assign a higher expected utility to continued action and continued infrastructure production than to halting. The claim here is not that there is no possible way to avoid this failure mode. We will together explore some potential solutions in later videos. The claim is that it is much easier to convince oneself that one has found a solution than it is to actually find a solution. This should make us extremely wary. We may propose a specification of a final goal that seems sensible and that avoids the problems that have been pointed out so far, yet which, upon further consideration by human or superhuman intelligence, turns out to lead to either unwholesome instantation or infrastructure provision, and hence the existential catastrophe when embedded in a superintelligent agent able to attain a decisive strategic advantage. And before we end this video, let us consider one more variation. We have been assuming the case of a superintelligence that is seeking to maximize its expected utility, where the utility function expresses its final goal. We have seen that this tends to lead to infrastructure provision. If we avoid this malignant outcome, if instead of a maximizing agent, we build a satisficing agent, one that simply seeks to achieve an outcome that is good enough according to some criterion, rather than an outcome that is as good as possible, there are at least two different ways to formalize this idea. The first would be to make the final goal itself have a satisficing character. For example, instead of giving the AI the final goal of making as many paper clips as possible, or of making exactly 1 million paper clips, we might give the AI the goal of making between, say, 999,000 and 1 million one paper clips. The utility function defined by the final goal will be indifferent between outcomes in this range. And as long as the AI is sure it has hit this wide target, it would see no reason to continue producing infrastructure. But this method fails in some way as before. The AI, if reasonable, never assigns exactly zero probability to it having failed to achieve its final goal. Therefore, the expected utility of continuing activity is greater than the expected utility of halting. Thus, a malignant infrastructure profusion can result. And another way of developing the satisficing idea is by modifying not the final goal, but the decision procedure that AI used to select plans and actions. Instead of searching for an optimal plan, the AI could be constructed to stop looking as soon as it found a plan that it judged gave a probability of success exceeding a certain threshold, say 95%. Hopefully, the AI could achieve that 95% probability of having manufactured 1 million paper clips without needing to turn the entire galaxy into infrastructure in the process. But this way of implementing the satisficing idea fails for another reason. There is no guarantee that the AI would select some humanly intuitive and sensible way of achieving a 95% chance of having manufactured 1 million paper clips, such as by building a single paperclip factory. Suppose that the first solution that pops into the AI's mind for how to achieve a 95% probability of achieving its final goal is to implement the probability maximizing plan for achieving the goal. Having thought of this solution and having correctly judged that it meets the satisfying criterion of giving at least 95% probability of successfully manufacturing 1 million paper clips, the AI would then have no reason to continue to search for alternative ways of achieving the goal. And infrastructure provision would result just as before. Perhaps there are better ways of building a satisficing agent, but let us take heed. Plans that appear natural and intuitive to us, humans need not to appear to superintelligence with a decisive strategic advantage, and vice versa. What we might refer to as mind crime is another project failure mode, particularly for a project whose aims include moral issues and motivational issues. In that it involves a potential side consequences of activities made by the AI for practical purposes. This is comparable to infrastructure provision. However, in the case of mind crime, the adverse effect is internal to the AI rather than external to it. This failure mode has its own name because it's simply to ignore but may present serious issues. Normally, we do not regard what is going on inside a computer as having any moral significance, except insofar as it affects things outside. But a machine superintelligence could create internal processes that have moral status. For example, a very detailed simulation of some actual or hypothetical human mind might be conscious and in many ways comparable to an emulation. One can imagine scenarios in which the AI creates trillions of such conscious simulations, perhaps in order to improve its understanding of human psychology and sociology. These simulations might be placed in simulated environments and subjected to various stimuli, and their reactions studied. Once their informational usefulness has been exhausted, they might be destroyed. If such practices were applied to beings that have high moral status, such as simulated humans or many other types of sentient mind, the outcome might be equivalent to genocide and thus extremely morally problematic. The number of victims, moreover, might be orders of magnitude larger than any genocide in history. And the claim here is not that creating sentient simulations is necessarily morally wrong in all situations. Much would depend on the conditions under which these beings would live, in particular the hedonic quality of their experience, but possibly on many other factors as well. And developing an ethics for these matters is a task outside the scope of this video. It's clear, however, that there is at least a potential for a vast amount of death and suffering among simulated or digital minds, and for theory, the potential for morally catastrophic outcomes. And There might also be other instrumental reasons aside from epistemic ones for a machine superintelligence to run computations that instantiate sentient minds or that otherwise infract moral norms. A superintelligence might threaten to mistreat or commit a reward sentient simulations in order to blackmail or incentivize various external agents, or it might create simulations in order to induce indexical uncertainty in outside observers. And well, here, the next inventory is incomplete. I will encounter additional malignant failure modes in later videos. But we have seen enough to conclude that scenarios in which some machine intelligence gets a decisive strategic advantage are to be viewed with grave concern.